G'day, I'm Sharon and welcome. I would like to sincerely thank Emma who has loaned me her Janome SD2014 for this demonstration, and we'll start with a little trip around her machine. So here is Emma's machine. It is an SD2014 and the number of the machine, or the model number of the machine, is on this little plaque here. There's a bit of it that says APPR number, and after the last oblique or diagonal line is where you will find the model number of the Janome machines. They are often in here in the harp space. Sometimes they're on the back of the machine, but often in there. Looking at the front of the machine, we have our length selector for stitches and our stitch selector. So there is no way that you can control the width of stitches, just the length of them, and the width of them is selected by the stitch selector. This is the reverse key, and as long as you depress it, the machine will go backwards. It does not stay there, it's however long you hold it for. This is the tension. It's actually currently set at 6. A normal number would be 4. So I'll be checking that out when I'm sewing with the machine. At this end we have the flywheel, and in the centre of it is an extra little round bit. This is where we declutch for if we're doing bobbin winding. So when you do that, it means that the motor's power is not going to the needle going up and down. You can have it going to the bobbin instead, so they're not both happening at the same time. If you ever find yourself in a position where you can hear the motor is going in one of these older machines and the needle is not going up and down, make sure that that is pressed in. So that centre piece of the flywheel, push it in to make sure it's engaging the whole machine in its operation. And there's the back of the machine. That's where the serial number is. I didn't get good film, but there is a switch underneath where the needle is at the back. It is the same ivory colour that the machine is, and it is for putting your feed dogs down if you'd like to do free motion quilting or darning. And at this end, this is where you can take the box off, and then you've got a free arm. I'm about to start threading Emma's machine, and I am using Rasant thread, R-A-S-A-N-T. It's a good quality thread and I'm always very, very happy to recommend it. However, it's not the only one out there. Good quality threads are available from companies like Coates and Gutermann and Metler. Check out with other people in your area what is available and what works well. Don't buy the really cheap stuff that you can get from the supermarket. It's really not worth it, and it doesn't matter how good your sewing machine is, poor quality thread will affect the outcome. The top of the machine flips up so that you can get in and see where the spaces are for all the feet, and the bobbin winder and the spindle to put the thread onto. I'm going to start by putting my thread onto the spindle with the thread coming out from underneath. These reels of thread are a bit long for the spindle. These normally you would put on that way, but because this is a long reel of thread, we go inside the end of the cardboard reel. We're going to come out to the left and go through this nice little metal place to put the thread, and then we're going around this bit that looks like it's got a screwdriver slot in there. An important thing to remember about this little piece that looks like you could tighten it with a screwdriver, and in fact you could, is that this is where the tension is for winding your bobbin. Now I've just got that very loosely around there at the moment. If I try and wind a bobbin with the thread like that, it will not be a nicely wound bobbin. It will be jumping around, it will have loose, soft thread, it won't be good at all. So we want that to be properly into that little tensioner. Get your thread at the other end. I like to fold it in half and give it a twist. By doing that, it's a stiffer piece of thread for me to put it from the inside to the outside. Bring it along, down there and up. To wind the bobbin, I need to turn the machine on, and I have to click the bobbin on the winder over to the right. And then it's a matter of depressing the foot control and keeping it depressed for as much as you want to do. I've let it go far enough that the thread in there is not going to come undone, and I'm going to trim it off very close to the bobbin and then keep depressing the foot control until I have got sufficient thread on the bobbin. When I have put as much thread on there as I want, which will depend on the size of the garment or whatever project I've got going on, I can then cut it off, click over to the left and lift the bobbin off, and I will put that on the machine to be inserted later. At this point I can press the little knob in so that it's no longer declutched, and it just clicked back in, and now the take-up lever goes up and down as I spin it. So now we're ready to actually thread the top part of the machine. The thread is still coming out from underneath, but now I'm not going to go backwards. I'm going to come straight across and go under this, and then down to the front. The knob over here is for how much foot pressure you are putting on your fabric. 3, with the square around it, is where it's normally set. Having that set to 3 works well for most things, but if you're sewing with a stretchy fabric, it can stretch the fabric as you sew. The other time you might want to reduce it is that if perhaps you're doing things like Peter Pan collars and things where you need to have a curve on a fabric as you're stitching, that will hold things so tight it's actually hard to turn the fabric. So by reducing that pressure, it's easier to get a nice curve. So I've brought the thread around the little black piece at the top, come down, up, around the take-up lever, and you'll notice I've still got 2 hands on that, and I'm making sure it's all properly into the bits that it's supposed to be in, and then through this guide. The final guide before we get down to where the needle is that one, and then there's one directly above the needle. If you're using a twin needle, you thread the machine twice down to here, and then you separate the threads out on either side. You probably shouldn't use a twin needle where the 2 parts of the needle are more than about 2 millimeters apart for this machine. But you do thread them one after the other, and when you get to that point above the needle, 1 thread through one side and 1 thread through the other. This machine doesn't have a needle threader, and I usually find tweezers are a better way than using my fingers. Alternatively, check out my video on how to use needle threaders, which are available separately from machines. From there the thread goes under the foot from the front and out to the back. The machine has a cutter here. Lift the thread from the back to the front and it will cut it off. Looks like it's fairly blunt at this point. To put the bobbin in, there's a little grid sort of thing at the front here. Pull it towards you to take the cover off. The bobbin goes in like a letter P. Put it in there, finger on top, bring your thread down to the front and then go around. The thread has to end up going into that bit there, so it comes forward and then back on itself. Cover in place and just push to the back. Hold the needle thread, and I'm going to hand wind the needle down and up. So I've now taken the take up lever from the top all the way to the bottom and back up to the top, and in doing that I've got my bobbin thread pulled up and we're ready to sew. And that is how you thread the Janome SD2014, which Emma tells me is about 40 years old. I'm sure there are Janome New Home versions of this machine. If I can work out any other model numbers, I will include them so that people can find it, but these machines last almost forever. They are very, very sturdy machines, and they are definitely still operating 40 years later. Hope you've learned something today, and I'll see you next time.